Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today, we're going to take a look at the studio discography of U.S. metal, progressive metal, hard rock band Queensryche. All right, a highly influential band that has seen its kind of like ups and downs over the years, right? Throughout the 80s, early 90s. Kind of hard to beat, man. Some killer albums, and then, you got a key member leaving. Band kind of struggling to fit into the musical landscape that was alternative and grunge rock in the 90s, right? Metal kind of out of favor a bit, trying to figure out what to do. They never really came out of that for a while. Then getting into, at odds with their legendary singer, Jeff Tate. He winds up leaving the band. They get a new singer in. They continue on. They go back to the old sound of the 80s. Have put out a string of a couple of great albums since then. Jeff's meanwhile doing kind of his solo thing, right? Playing old Queensryche classics. We know the whole story. We're not going to get into that. That's there's another video covering that here on the channel. You can go check out if you want, where I talk a lot about that. Today we're just going to talk about the Queensryche albums. All right, I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my favorite. I had all of these. I'll get it out of the way right now and say that I find most of their like mid-late 90s and early 2000s releases kind of unlistenable for the most part. All right, I got a couple of them here, but for the most part, I had all of them. All right, I decided I didn't need to own them anymore. All right, I just could not get into them, and I'm a fan. All right, you know right there, there's some issues with those recordings. I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to chime in and say they love those albums. And you know what? That's fine if you do. I don't have to like them. I've tried to like them. I've tried to love them. Just couldn't. So I decided I didn't need to keep them. I just got, way too much stuff. Can't keep everything, right? So, but I've heard them all. I can speak about all of them. So, not a big deal. So, what do we got here? We got 15 in total. There's actually 16. All right. I'll make mention of the Tate cover album from 2007. One of the later ones with Tate still in the band. Some interesting covers on there. I think the band were just kind of grasping at, God, what do we do here? Because obviously they're not selling any records, right? People just not interested in the music they were making, put out a covers album. We've seen so many bands do that. There's actually some good stuff on there. They cover some Floyd and some Sabbath, a bunch of other things. Yeah, not a bad album, right? Not a bad album if you like the covers thing. But I'm not going to put that in the ranking because, again, it's just a covers album. I like to stick to the all original material. So let's kind of kick things off. I'm going to go starting at number 15, and feel free to rank these as you like them. Do your top 5, your top 10, rank the whole catalog, whatever you like. Okay, remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. We all hear these differently, right? We all like them for different reasons. I grew up with these guys, so, I'm going to favor the older classics, but I do like a lot of the newer stuff quite a bit. So Dedicated to Chaos from 2011 is the bottom of the barrel for me. I remember when that album came out, and I listened to that, and I'm like, Jesus, this band is just like sputtering on fumes, right? The needle's at the red on the E, and they just kind of don't know what to do. And, at that point, they had to either break up or, figure something else out. And the result was that Tate left the band. There's really nothing memorable on that album for me. All right. I really tried. Just for me, that's the bottom of the barrel. Queensryche just kind of like grabbing at whatever they can to stay relevant. And it just didn't work. I'm going to go for number 14. I'm going to go with 1997's Here in the New Frontier. Another album, big disappointment. So, I was into Promised Land. You had Operation Mindcrime, you had Empire, you had Promised Land. Promised Land, a bit different from the two that came before it. Not quite as like immediate with just classic songs, but a really good, dense, complex album, kind of heavy album. And then, again, grunge and alternative rock is all over the place. All right, obviously Queensryche from Seattle, no doubt all the Seattle bands are all the rage, and the band probably figuring, you know what, why don't we just try and fit in here, right? We're from the same place, right? So they release Here in the Now Frontier in 1997. Again, doesn't work. Queensryche kind of playing grungy rock, not really anything progressive on that. Don't really like the production of that album. Songs aren't overly memorable. Just, the Queensryche that we've come to love, really different all of a sudden, all right? Chris DeGarmo, flying the coop, All right. Many will say that the reason why Queensryche was never the same after Promised Land is because, DeGarmo left the band, a key writer in the band. Really good guitar player, too. All right. As we've seen in recent years, though, they can certainly still write and play the type of music we expect from Queensryche. So I think there was a lot more to it than that, but I think that was a big blow for the band. I also think, personally, without getting too much into this stuff, is that I think that Jeff Tate grew a little disenchanted with playing that style of metal, wanted to branch out into other things. All right. The problem is, when the general public has a certain expectation from a band that produces a string of albums in a similar vein, right? You want to keep expecting that. Not that they did the same album over and over again, because they certainly did not. But you can't tell me that Here in the New Frontier isn't completely different to all those albums that came before. It really is. Okay, there were bands out there that were doing that kind of grungy rock thing, grungy metal thing, way better than Queensryche. Okay, if Queensryche trying to be Alice in Chains, let Alice in Chains be Alice in Chains. Queensryche should just be Queensryche. And I get it. I know that metal was kind of out of favor in the 90s, right? Totally get that. So you know what? It was an experiment. Didn't really work. Same thing at number 13, Q2K from 1999. Maybe a little bit more interesting, right? Maybe they're trying to inject a little bit more metal in there. But for me, it's just still not clicking. Still not clicking. Number 12, going to go 10 years after that, for an album that at first, I kind of applauded them for doing another kind of concept album, and the concept was pretty cool. We're talking about American Soldier from 2009. Pretty well-produced album, all right? Some decent songs on it. I felt the album came from the heart. I thought, it was one of Tate's better vocal performances. And, obviously he was kind of moving away from being that shrieking metal guy, with the pipes of doom from the 80s. I mean, I get that. I think for him doing his kind of like mid-rangey thing, because he's still fantastic at that, I think that American Soldier is a really good vocal performance from him, as long as you're not expecting Jeff Tate of, 1988, right? My problem with American Soldier is I think that the album's long and it's bland, all right? There's some good songs, good melodies. I just want a little more, right? Because I thought that could have been a really, really great comeback album for them. Really wasn't, and the general public didn't really latch onto it. All right. Coming in at number 11. All right. I'm going to go with this guy right here, Operation Mindcrime 2 from 2006. Did they need to return to the Mindcrime? It's debatable. Again, it's a band who is just trying to find something that's working. They've fallen out of favor with the general public. They can't understand why. So as a lot of bands do, right, let's go revisit an album that did really well for us and see if we can rekindle that spark. There's parts on here that kind of did. For the most part, it really doesn't. Again, just like American Soldier, just the effort is there. But man, first Operation Mindcrime, so many memorable songs, right? On here, not really. Not really. They tried, though. They tried. Interesting tour, all right? I just think, by this time, it's basically the Jeff Tate show, all right? He's kind of running everything the band's doing, and you get the feeling, and again, based on a lot of interviews I was reading, news reports at the time, you can kind of sense that there's a lot of dissension and frustration in the Queensryche camp, which obviously a few years later you would kind of see the results of that, right? All right, next up, we're going to go, again, another one that I had, and I just didn't feel I needed to keep, but I liked it when it came out, 2003's Tribe, all right? If you ask me, that's the best album they put out post-Promised Land with Jeff Tate. That album's pretty rocking, okay? Hints of kind of the prog metal that they were known for, hints, but still, just a pretty solid early 2000s record, I thought, all right? Nothing legendary on it, no classic songs on it, but an album that is fairly listenable, for me anyway. Okay, so I kind of dug that when it came out. Then we're going to go to number 9. So I'm going to go with the kind of the comeback with the new singer Todd La Torre, self-titled Queensryche 2013. When I didn't really have any expectations obviously, although, Todd played with Crimson Glory for a bit, so I was kind of familiar with him. But I didn't have any expectations of this based on all the albums that came before. But man, when I picked this up and played it, I was like, this kind of reminds me of their classic sound from the 80s. Pretty damn good, Vindication, Redemption, all right, Spore, Where Dreams Go to Die. A lot of really solid material on here, which I think they would improve on over the next two releases. But I think this was a change for the better, back to their original direction, back to their original formula. And, folks who are kind of, there's two camps here, obviously. There's folks who, Queensryche doesn't exist without Jeff Tate, even though, a lot of those folks who say that basically stop listening to them after Promised Land. But, just all they really care about is those 80s albums. And, I get that. And refuse to kind of give the current lineup a chance, because even though that a lot of the songs on these albums sound like vintage Queensryche, which, most of those people were also bitching about those albums in the 90s and the early 2000s and not buying them, right? So anyway, I dig this album. I dig it. Next up, what are we at? Number 8, 1994's Promised Land. Like I said, very dense and intricate album. All right, a lot of moods on here. This is a kind of a step away from the commerciality of Empire, but for me in a good way. I there were some people that were a little turned off by this. If you were expecting an album full of hits like that, or Mindcrime or Rage for Order, you didn't really get that here. But me being the kind of prog guy, right, into a lot of the darker metal stuff, I really appreciated this album quite a bit when it came out, and some good songs on here. One More Time, Lady Jane, title track, Bridge. No commercial stuff on here. But I think good, moody Queensryche trying to do something a little different. Maybe they decided here, hey, this kind of thing is not really selling anymore. We got to do something else. And that's precisely what they did, right? Where are we going next? All right, so number 5. We're at the top 5 already. No, sorry, number 6. Almost, I'm losing track of numbers here, folks. Sorry, that was number 8. Number 7, we're going to go with Condition Human, all right, which is from 2015. I was hugely into this when it came out. This, in fact, I love both of them, or a couple recent ones with Todd on vocals. And I went to see them on this tour. All right, they were absolutely fantastic. Just some killer tracks on here. Guardian, man, what a great song that is. Just so many killer tracks on here. Very, very memorable. And that's one of the things that I like so much about this record, is that it's just very memorable. It's progressive metal like we remember Queensryche. It's got the great vocals, and I know a lot of people say that Todd is just kind of like a Tate copycat, but it's familiar sounding, right? And the songs are good. All right, killer guitar work. It's just, I don't know, it just works for me. Same thing, even more so, I think, number 6, and I don't have it to show because it's in my car and the car's in the shop. All right, I left a handful of CDs in there, and that has not left my car in ages. The Verdict from 2019 was one of my favorites of the year. It was a top 10 release for me last year, and again, just littered and packed with great songs. There's lots of proggy moments, all right? Good metal riffing, terrific vocals, catchy melodies. Like I said, if you haven't given these last 3 Queensryche records a chance and you were a fan from the beginning, you really need to. Just, I can't tell people enough, just get over the fact that Tate is gone. Just got to get over it. Accept them for what they are, right? There's so many people who are like pining for Tate, but they don't go buy Tate solo albums either. They'll go see him live when he's playing Operation Mindcrime or, Warning or Empire in its entirety, but they're not interested in his new material. They just want to hear him sing the old stuff. I get that, but it's like, if you want to hear Queensryche the way they used to sound, without Tate, obviously, check out these new albums, man. They're really good, I'm telling you. Coming in number 5, we're going to go 1990 Empire. This was a huge album for the band. Huge album for the band. Is there anybody listening? Great song. All right. Title track. Of course, Jet City Woman, Best I Can. Right. Resistance, Silent Lucidity, another big hit for the band. Kind of a different type of tune, but, great songs on here. I don't reach for this as often as some of the other ones, right? But was big into it at the time. Totally understand its significance and just, great songwriting on there. That's what it's all about, right? The band adding some pop elements to their progressive metal stew. Really worked. Caught the public's attention in a big way. All right, number 4, we're going to go 1986 Rage for Order. Another tour that I saw. I saw these guys quite often during these years. Again, a little bit different than the album that came before it. This had some kind of like, industrial new wave goth elements mixing in with the progressive metal, little pop things going on here too. But still a lot of progressive metal, right? Which is kind of like a new terminology at the time. Walk in the Shadows, I Dream in Infrared, The Whisper, Gonna Get Close to You. That was kind of like their little hit on here. Very cool tune. The Killing Words, Surgical Strike. So many great songs on here. This is a very underrated album from that era, I think. Always dug that a lot. All right, coming in at number 3, I'm going to go a little bit cheat from my normal way of ranking things. It depends. I don't always include EPs. If the EPs are stacked enough with, all new material, I generally will include them. If I have them, know them, and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes EPs have like 1 new song and 3 live tunes or a couple covers, whatever. Sometimes I tend to not include those. But, quite frankly, the EP from 1983 just, hit me like a hammer when it came out. I remember everybody I know was listening to this when it came out. We were like, who the hell is this band? Queensryche. Queen of the Reich, right? Oh, my God. Just great stuff. The Lady Wore Black. All 4 tracks on here are just killer. And, man, you just cannot beat it. Cannot beat it. That voice. Remember the first time you heard Jeff Tate's voice, guys? It was like, holy moly. We were just like, we are not worthy. We are not worthy. It's like crazy. All right, where are we? Number 2. Going to go 1 year later with The Warning from 1984. This is their official, full-length debut. Again, chock full of tunes. You know them all. Again, another great performance by the band. The guitar work is so awesome here. Really at this time, there was really nobody else doing this kind of music save for, Fate's Warning, we're just starting to get into it. But, Queensryche, a very, very groundbreaking act, I think, that sometimes I don't think they get enough credit when you talk about the kind of creation of progressive metal. That like Rainbow and Rush were kind of doing similar type things, but different in the 70s and the late 70s, right? Then, late 80s going into the early 90s, of course, you had Fate's Warning and Dream Theater, certainly. But I think, you got to give credit to Queensryche, who were just kind of doing all this stuff a few years prior. And just top to bottom, classic songs on here. A full-length debut that I reach back for quite often. Number 1 from 88's got to be Operation Mindcrime. Come on. One of the greatest metal concept albums of all time. So many great tracks, so well put together. It's just orchestrated. It's got, just those instant classic songs amidst the whole storyline. You got all the different voices, all the different parts. Just so many. Absolutely. The Needle Lies, Remember Now. Revolution Calling. Oh, God. Revolution Calling is just, the incomparable Eyes of a Stranger. Doesn't get much better than that, folks, right? So there you have it. There's my ranking of the Queensryche catalog, top to bottom, all right? Operation Mindcrime, The Warning, all right? The EP from 83, Rage for Order, Empire, The Verdict, Condition Human, Promised Land, Queensryche, self-titled, Tribe, Operation Mindcrime 2, American Soldier, Q2K, Here in the New Frontier, Now Frontier, Dedicated to Chaos, coming in at the bottom. And if you want to throw Take Cover in there somewhere, go right ahead. I'm not going to. But that's my ranking of the Queensryche catalog. Like I said, a stack of classics, a stack of not so classic albums, right? For me, those years where they're just trying to figure out what the hell to do anymore in the musical climate that was, not very good albums, guys. If you like them, that's great. All right. I don't. I didn't then. I don't now. Hey, I've tried. Man, I've tried because I love this band. But, they have come back. All right. Their 3 most recent albums are killer. Love them. So a band that could have just faded into obscurity, just gone forever. They've come back, all right, revitalized lineup, a killer new singer, and put out really good music that at least kind of harkens back to the spirit of the old stuff. And that, I think, is... got to give them credit for that, right? Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're on YouTube all the damn time. We'll see you guys real soon. What else we got going on? How about a little ranking the studio albums of Joe Walsh? It's coming up next, all right? See you soon. Bye-bye.